Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my NFL 2022 preview and predictions. Last time we talked about the AFC East, and today we're moving to a much more competitive division in the AFC North. And we are going to start out with the team that came up short in the Super Bowl, the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, to say that the Cincinnati Bengals were the surprise team of last year, I think would be an understatement. I don't think anybody thought that the Cincinnati Bengals were built to compete in the Super Bowl at the level they were at last year, and they proved a lot of people wrong. But at the end of the day, the biggest knock on the Cincinnati Bengals was that they couldn't protect their quarterback, Joe Burrow. Even though they finished with a 10-7 record, a lot of that primarily came down to Joe Burrow finding a way to thread the needle to his outstanding weapons. And to give the Bengals credit, they did surround him with fantastic offensive pieces. However, the offseason, the Bengals decided that they were no longer going to let Joe Burrow be the living sack machine that he had been. La'el Collins and Alex Kappa are both excellent additions to the offensive line, and this is really much needed for them. I think La'el Collins is just the caliber of tackle that you really can't find many places in the NFL. It's very interesting because offensive linemen are, they're few and far between in terms of elite talent, and I think La'el Collins is one of them. I think Kappa's a good pick. They also got Hayden Hurst at tight end. They lost Uzama. I believe he ended up with the Jets, but Hayden Hurst I feel like will be at least a decent replacement for him at that tight end position. But again, when you have the three-headed monster of Boyd, Higgins, and Chase, you really don't have to worry that much about offensive weapons. So as you can see at their schedule, they don't really have too difficult of a schedule. And again, similar to the Bills, you need to remember that they are the team to beat now. A lot of teams are going to be going up against them and are going to be fearing having to play them. So overall, I have them finishing with an 11-6 record. Again, maybe that can be higher. Maybe they end up winning that Week 11 against the Steelers. Maybe they win that Week 14 against the Browns. Those are really the 2 weeks that I could see things changing. Maybe an additional loss at Tennessee or an additional loss at the Saints. Maybe even a loss Week 13 at the Chiefs. But besides that, again, I think the Bengals are going to improve with one win. So an 11-6 record. Now the big question is, this is a great record, but will it be good enough to win the AFC North for the second year in a row? Well, let's find out and move on to the next team. Up next, we have the team that shocked the world by making it into the playoffs last year. We have the Pittsburg Steelers. Now, last year, as I said, they went 9-7-1, and while that's a decent record, they never played like that quality of a team. Big Ben, you could tell, was on his last leg. Najee Harris was a good rookie, but he never really got going. Their offensive line was awful. There was just a lot of subpar pieces and subpar performances. Now, again, they managed to get in, and their weaknesses showed in the wild card round when they played the Kansas City Chiefs. And while you might think that, looking at their win-loss record, or at least my prediction, that they improved a whole lot, they really didn't. In fact, they took a major step back with Big Ben announcing his retirement. Now, if you look at the key offseason acquisitions, Myles Jack, I think, is a great get-at linebacker. Myles Jack, I think, used to be one of those players where, he was in the conversation of top 10 linebackers in the NFL. Maybe now he's top 15, top 20, depending on who you are. The biggest question, however, is who's going to be quarterback. Of course, they drafted Kenny Pickett. Personally, I am not as high on Kenny Pickett as others. But they did sign Mitchell Trubisky. I don't know how Mitch Trubisky will be. I'm assuming he is going to end up being their starting quarterback. He's not going to be a person that can win them that many games. Now, they also got George Pickens from Georgia, who I'm really excited about. They lost Juju Smith-Schuster. He ended up with Kansas City. But I think that George Pickens is going to be a fine player. Deontay Jackson and Chase Claypool, that's a solid 3 wide receiver unit. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. Now, if you look at my prediction, it's a little jarring because they start off with a few losses, then they go on a few weeks of straight wins. Do I think this will actually happen? Probably not. But I do think that something similar could happen. I think they're going to have a slow start. Maybe they don't lose to the Jets, but maybe they lose to the Browns instead. But again, this is a very tough schedule to start out on. And, they're not playing easy teams, but here's the thing that I will say about the Pittsburgh Steelers is their head coach, Mike Tomlin, is a consistent winner. And I don't think, regardless of who's at quarterback, his defense is going to be good enough and his offense is going to be just good enough to make it over the top. So I have them going 9-8, so technically speaking, a better record than last year. But again, how does this fall in comparison to the other teams in the AFC North? Moving on, we now arrive at probably the most interesting and hardest to rank team, the Cleveland Browns. Now, an 8-9 season last year where you missed the playoffs is not great. Granted, before we get out the gate and before the Baker Mayfield hate starts, I think it's important to remember he was playing with an injured shoulder. With a position like quarterback that depends so much on your arm and shoulder mobility, I think it's important that that factor be kept in the picture when looking at him overall as a player. Now, yes, he does have some character flaws, but again, I think it's important to remember he was not playing at 100%. Now, with that being said, the Cleveland Browns decided to move into a completely different direction, and they decided to pick up Amari Cooper in a trade with the Dallas Cowboys and leverage most of their future assets on Deshaun Watson from the Houston Texans. Now, why, you might be asking, is this a hard team to rank? Objectively, Amari Cooper is a fantastic wide receiver. I don't know if you could say he's better than Jarvis Landry. I think I'd probably lean more towards he's an upgrade over Jarvis Landry, but what is the deal here? And the biggest factor is Deshaun Watson. No one knows if he's going to be suspended. If so, how many games, if he'll play, and if he does play, what form is he going to be in? He was out the entirety of last season, and it's one of those things where nobody really knows. You can make your best guess, as I've tried to do here, but again, nobody really knows what's going to happen. So with that being said, if you look at their schedule, this is my prediction of what would happen if Deshaun plays a full year. Now again, granted, things could change and you could have Baker Mayfield for the first 6 weeks. I actually don't think the results change that much if you take Deshaun out and put in Baker for the first 6 weeks. I think the ending from week 7 to week 18 has a chance to change some if you have Deshaun step in, because there will be some more rust and stuff like that. But I don't think it'll be anything major. But I have them going 9-8 overall. Again, maybe you can. I think there might be a few additional losses. Maybe that week 16 against the Saints. I think probably the biggest one that could potentially happen is that week 15 at the Ravens. But besides that, I think the Browns are going to be a pretty solid team overall. Now again, they now have the same record as the Steelers. So the biggest team that we're going to look at now, of course, is the Baltimore Ravens. And the big question is, are the Baltimore Ravens going to win enough games to win the AFC North? And now we arrive at probably the team that had one of the best NFL drafts and I think has the most potential to improve this upcoming season for obvious reasons. And that, of course, is the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Baltimore Ravens went 8-9-0 last year, and they missed the playoffs. Now, why was that? The former MVP Lamar Jackson, as well as many other positions on their team, were injured. And I hear a lot of people say, Lamar is not that good a player. He's a running back, whatever. You look at how the Ravens played with Hundley, and then you look at how they played with Lamar, and you tell me that, Hundley is a similar player to Lamar Jackson, but he's nowhere near Lamar Jackson. And he makes that big a difference. Now, what do I mean by they had a good offseason? Well, adding Marcus Williams as at a safety is not a bad way to start. He's one of the better safeties in the NFL. More importantly than that, I have down there Kyle Hamilton as safety. Yes, that's important. But they also got not George Karlaftis. I don't know why I was about to say that. Tyler Linderbaum, as their new offensive center. Not to mention they also got David Ojabo in the second round. He was a player who was projected to go into the first round. Of course, he tore his ACL during some draft workouts, and you hate to see that, but when I say that Ojabo probably found the best fit he could with the Ravens, I mean, it was just an excellent fit. And with that being said, I really think that this year the Ravens are going to improve a ton. If you look at their schedule, it's not too bad. And again, maybe there is an additional game they lose somewhere. Again, I'm thinking maybe week 8 at the Bucks, maybe week 13 at the Broncos. We'll be talking about the Broncos in a few weeks here, and you'll get to hear my thoughts on them. But overall, again, I think that this is a pretty favorable record. As you see, 12-5-0, that's better than the Bengals. So I do think the Baltimore Ravens are going to win the AFC North, be back on top, get that guaranteed playoff spot. So again, at the very end of all of these previews, we're going to do a playoff preview. So far we have the Bills making it from the AFC East, and now we have the Baltimore Ravens 100% making it from the AFC North. So the 12-5 Baltimore Ravens, that's how good I think they will be in the upcoming season. And now let's get into my top 5 offensive players of the 2022 season. My number 5 offensive player, which is shocking to say, but this just shows you how good the AFC North is in terms of talent, is Ja'Marr Chase, wide receiver, Cincinnati Bengals. 81 receptions, 1,455 yards. That is 4th best in the NFL. 13 touchdowns on 18 yards average per catch and an 83.1 grade from PFF. He killed it his rookie year. And in order for the Cincinnati Bengals to have a good season again this upcoming year, he's going to have to show out. And I think he will. I think Ja'Marr Chase is going to be a top 5 wide receiver for many years to come. Not only, again, I don't think he's just going to be a top 5 offensive player in his division. I'm talking top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. So once again, Ja'Marr Chase at my number 5 of my top 5 offensive players of the upcoming year, wide receiver, Cincinnati Bengals. My 4th best offensive player plays a position that is new to my list, and that is Mark Andrews, tight end for the Baltimore Ravens. Mark Andrews is easily one of the 3 best tight ends in the NFL. The other ones, I'll give you a hint, will be making the list when we get to their divisions. But last year, 107 receptions, 1,361 yards, 9 touchdowns on 12.7 yards per catch. And get this, a 91.5 overall grade from PFF. Not only that, he ranked first in tight end targets, first in tight end receptions, first in tight end receiving yards, and he tied for first in tight end receiving touchdowns. I think that's all you need to say. So once again, my number 4 offensive player, Mark Andrews, tight end for the Baltimore Ravens. My number 3 offensive player, the AFC North. Again, a new position, Nick Chubb, running back, Cleveland Browns. Last year, 228 rushing attempts, 1,259 rushing yards. That is best for second in the NFL. 8 touchdowns and 5.5 average yards per carry with an 81.7 grade from PFF. Now, why do you think he's going to be the third best over Mark Andrews and Jamar Chase? Well, that's because, as I said, there's a lot of uncertainty going into the Cleveland Browns season. The one player that is certain to show out each week is Nick Chubb. And I think that, again, for the Cleveland Browns to be successful, Nick Chubb is going to have to be that guy. And I think he will be. So again, that is Nick Chubb, my third best offensive player for 2020. For 2022 in the AFC North, Cleveland Browns running back. At number 2, we have the former MVP, Lamar Jackson, quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I'm not going to go over Lamar Jackson's stats from last year because I don't think they are super indicative of the type of player he is. But let me say this. Why do I think he's number 2 and not number 1? Well, there is a better quarterback that I believe at number 1, which that might have given away who it is. But Lamar Jackson is going to be in an uphill battle, not only coming back from injury, but also because he's not going to have that many great offensive weapons outside of Mark Andrews. They traded away Hollywood Brown to the Arizona Cardinals, and there's going to be some adjustment periods for his new receivers. Now, again, I think Lamar Jackson is going to be great, and I think the Ravens are going to win the AFC North, but I think there's going to be some growing pains. And for that reason, I have to put Lamar Jackson at number 2 of my best offensive players in the AFC North. And here we go with number 1. If any of you didn't see this coming, I don't know what to tell you. The number 1 player in the AFC North, Joe Shiesty, Joe Burrow, quarterback, Cincinnati Bengals. 4,611 yards, 34 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 54.3 QBR, and a 91.7 grade from PFF. Joe Burrow is the next star quarterback in the NFL. And here's the scary thing. He had that incredible season last year with a subpar offensive line. And now he has a decent offensive line. Same offensive weapons, same great running back in Joe Mixon. It's going to be a scary year, I think, for teams going up against Joe Burrow. And he's going to prove that he is the next great quarterback up with that Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert level of quarterback play. So the best offensive player in the AFC North is Joe Burrow. Now, let's get on to the defensive players. My number 5 defensive player in the AFC North is Denzel Ward, cornerback from the Cleveland Browns. Now, Denzel Ward just signed a massive extension to stay in Cleveland, and, well, his stats were not particularly great last year. 34 solo tackles, 0 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions, and 10 passes defended, a 76.9 grade from PFF. But again, as I have said multiple times, in order for you to have a great defense, you need a leader in the back and a leader up front. And I think Denzel Ward for the Cleveland Browns is going to be their leader in the back this upcoming year, just because he has gone through some growing pains a bit, but I think this is going to be the year that he solidifies himself. I think he's been in the conversation of a top 10 corner in the NFL. I think this year it'll be easy. He might even be considered a top 5. So with that being said, my 5th best defensive player for the upcoming year, Denzel Ward, cornerback, Cleveland Browns. The number 4 best defensive player in the AFC North. The new Baltimore Raven, safety Marcus Williams. 52 solo tackles, 1 forced fumble, 2 interceptions, and 8 passes defended. Now, the Baltimore Ravens are in an interesting spot as they might have the most stacked safety room in the entire NFL. And Marcus Williams as the leader of that safety room, I think is scary. An 80.1 overall grade from PFF. He's a monster. And especially in a division where you're going to have to go up against some major offensive talent, as we just saw, he's going to be a pivotal piece. Again, and that's something I forgot to mention with Denzel Ward. The corners are incredibly valuable now with how offensive heavy the AFC North is. And so that's why I think Marcus Williams is an easy number 4 in my top 5 AFC North defensive players. My third best defensive player in the AFC North is Cam Heyward, defensive tackle from the Pittsburg Steelers. 53 solo tackles, 10 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 1 interception. That's right, an interception at defensive tackle. And listen to this. PFF, 91 overall grade. And only that, he led defensive tackles in terms of solo tackles. Cam Heyward is just a monster. And I know he's getting older, but until he shows signs of slowing down, it's similar to Von Miller. I'm not going to rank him any lower. And that's simply put why he's at the top. He's one of the best defensive tackles in the league. And in most other divisions, he would be number 1. But there are 2 players who are mind-bogglingly good that he just can't be put above them. So that's why I have Cam Heyward as my number 3 defensive player in the AFC North. At number 2, we have the reigning NFL Defensive Player of the Year, TJ Watt, linebacker/edge, Pittsburgh Steelers. 48 solo tackles, 22.5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, 0 interceptions, an 89.5 grade from PFF. So you might be asking yourself, why is the Defensive Player of the Year number 2 and not number 1? And I just think that the next player that I'm going to mention, again, you probably know who he is just a little bit better, and I think he's going to have a monster upcoming season. But TJ Watt, he's going to carry the Pittsburgh Steelers. Him and Cam Heyward and Minkah Fitzpatrick, they are the team that if the Pittsburgh Steelers don't fall off the face of the earth because of their offense, he's going to be the reason why. And for that reason, he's number 2. Once again, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year, TJ Watt, linebacker, Pittsburgh Steelers, number 2 defensive player in the AFC North. Now, on to number 1. And my number 1 defensive player in the AFC North, Myles Garrett, defensive end, Cleveland Browns. 33 solo tackles, 16 sacks, 1 forced fumble, a 92 grade from PFF. I think Myles Garrett is going to be in the Defensive Player of the Year discussion this year. I think that, as I said earlier, Denzel Ward's going to carry the back of the Browns offense. He's going to carry the front. Myles Garrett is just a different kind of player. He is a generational talent. And I think the fact that the Browns have been good but not great has really prevented him from getting some of the recognition he deserves. And while, again, I don't think they're going to be overly great this coming year, I think that Myles Garrett is going to put on such a show that he's going to keep them competitive even if their quarterback situation is sticky. So number 1 defensive player in the AFC North, we have Myles Garrett. Thank you all for watching. Once again, I will have my AFC South preview coming up soon. But if you have any thoughts, comments, please remember to like, share this video. Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to see some discussion about what you think about my rankings and what you think about my predictions. And I hope to see you all next time. And again, make sure to subscribe and tell your friends about my channel. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all soon.